Hello and welcome back to A Shark's Perspective. The insurance industry has been an interesting vertical, often at the forefront of focus, if you will, in the customer acquisition space, along with financial services, home services, and a few other heavy D2C verticals. But how is the industry evolving, and how much more of that is beginning to focus on helping customers solve their problems? Rahim Rajpar is a principal at Hawthorne Advisors, and he's also the former CMO and Head of Direct to Consumer at John Hancock Insurance. And on this episode, we'll discuss the insurance industry, the role of the CMO, growth and acquisition mindsets, focus on customers, fluffy social marketing, the founding fathers, the Cape, the Toronto Blue Jays, CPLs, CPAs, LTVs, and a lot more. So let's tune in to a growth acquisition principal with a growth acquisition shark on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. Well, Rahim, thank you so much for being with us today on A Shark's Perspective. If you would tell us a little bit about your background and your career to date.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's a real joy, and it's a lot of fun. I haven't done one of these in a while. So a little bit on me. I started my career in sort of the traditional marketing roles in financial services, everything from brand management to product and segment management, and very quickly moved into sort of running businesses for the companies that I've worked for. Most of the businesses I worked for, or most of the businesses I built, essentially, all had an element of the consumer and the customer, and a very strong marketing impetus to drive the business results forward. And as such, my last business I ran was very much an acquisition business. It was generating new customers for the brand and taking those customers through a life cycle of life insurance ownership. And now what I do is I help other companies actually do exactly what I did at Hancock as the head of their direct business.
So I met you at a performance marketing conference, Connectivert, where you were on a keynote panel with our friend Katie Bartel. And you were talking about your thoughts in the industry and everything else. But I give a lot of credit to CMOs, especially in the insurance, mortgage services, things like that, home services, industries where lead gen, where it's so important to drive that result. How did you see your role as a CMO, being a little bit different, being responsible really for driving that lead gen? So much of the conversation going on with CMOs is driving growth. And it's not necessarily the brand story that we grew up with in the Mad Men era, but now it's about driving growth. And in the insurance industry, financial services, a lot of those types of verticals, you really seem to have a better feel for that understanding than what most industry CMOs do.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question. And I think rooted in the fact that I was the insurance CMO was the fact that I ran the direct business. And the direct business was all about acquisition, right? It was all about taking the marketing function, modernizing it, moving it into the digital age, creating the ideal customer experience so that people will flow through your sales funnel and eventually end up being a customer. And so, the two are not that dissimilar. And in traditional financial services, we work a lot with intermediaries. And so a lot of folks or traditional thinking is some of that stuff doesn't matter. Well, I would argue that it matters, and it matters even more, because at the end of the day, advisors are people too, right? And they're customers as well. And the experiences they have with different organizations shapes their perceptions of their experience with your company. And so paying attention to all of those types of details and taking the same mindset that I had with the direct-to-consumer business and bringing it to the rest of the organization, I think is what shaped me to be able to think about and offer up these types of acquisition mindsets, growth mindsets, experience mindsets to the CMO role for insurance.
Yeah, that's a great point. So what was it about insurance, though? The insurance industry is not exactly one that you think of as a sexy industry.
Not at all.
But there's not a more important thing to have when you need it than insurance.
Right.
And when you talk about customer experience, really understanding the experience that you create in the insurance vertical is a lot different than other industries.
Sure.
Unpack that a little bit with what you did at John Hancock and the industry as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think the first thing is that the industry hasn't changed in 150 years. And many of us tout the fact that we've been around for 150 years, which is great from an insurance claims paying ability. but many of us haven't changed in 150 years.
Well, you did work for a company named after one of our founding fathers, after all.
Exactly. At Hancock, we sort of turned that upside down, and we really sought to innovate the entire buying and ownership experience, right? And so, for me, I think when we look at insurance as a industry, there's a lot of perceptions about it, right? It's the necessary evil. It's the thing that we've got to get done, got to get checked off our list. And if we look at the relationship that most of us have with our life insurers, it's pretty minimal. It's a one and done. I buy it, and then I get a bill from you every year, and that's pretty much it. And so, I think the value proposition of insurance today is much greater than just that experience that I defined. And insurers today are tapping into a whole bunch of different things to actually generate a long-standing customer relationship with their customer as they bring them on, i.e., changing the entire ownership experience. Right today, for example, when I was at when I was at John Hancock, we did this through the Vitality program. Right, the Vitality program was a wellness-based program that had customers engage in healthy activities. They got rewarded for those healthy activities, and as such, they saved money on their life insurance. Now, the nice part about that program is it changed the paradigm with the relationship between the insurer and the customer. Instead of that one and done type of relationship, we saw a lot more interaction between the customer and the insurer. And on average, through that program, it was 20 plus times a month that the insurer was interacting with that brand. So that's just huge, right? And I've seen that done through a number of different programs. I've seen that done, at Hancock through the Wealth program. I've seen that done, through other types of programs surrounding wellness as well. I think financial education and financial health is another big angle that a lot of insurers are going with. And what they're trying to do is appeal to the customer to say, this is an important part of your process in building out your financial plan. And we realize that, and we're going to be additive to that. We're not only going to be this one-stop solution for you where you come to us for that insurance need. I think the second part of that, to be honest with you, is the amount of innovation that's happening in this space. If you look at InsurTech, if you take a look at what's happening around the carrier's desire to be something different than they were in the past. They're building out experience journeys for customers. They're thinking about, how do we leverage big data to really change our business model? How do we measure, right, customer satisfaction with us? That's something that traditionally was never done in the life insurance space. So these are all the things that are happening. And, I think, turning it on an acquisition angle for a second, we spend so much money and so much effort getting a customer. And I think traditionally in life insurance, haven't spent a ton of money keeping those customers. And I'm starting to see those things break down and people really think about what those in-force experiences are. So there's a lot of change and innovation happening in the insurance space. And I do believe that it's all being driven by that, growth mindset, that mindset of needing to put the customer at the center of it, make your experiences multi-channel, particularly digital, and simplify this thing for the customer. At the end of the day, right? At the end of the day, we have, if I look at insurers, I don't think they're competing with each other. I actually think they're competing with non-consumption here. The number of people who own individual life insurance continues to decline in this country. So there's plenty of market share out there for insurers to actually, go out there and get new customers. And if you look at the opportunities, particularly in the middle market, where quick transactional experiences that are digital work, this is the gaping hole in the industry, right? And this is where insurers are trying to get in and break into that space. Through some of the consulting that I've been doing through Hawthorne, we're actually helping firms build out strategies on how to enter this space, on how to design product around the space, because it's different from a traditional brokerage product development shop, right? And then the most important part of it is building out that seamless journey that customers can come out of and be a customer, and have that protection that they need. So there's a lot of emphasis and focus on this, and we spend a lot of time working with companies to help build out these strategies and bringing them to fruition.
Well, to your point about not enough money being spent to keep customers there with you, we spend so much in acquisition. That's not a problem just in the insurance industry.
Right.
Trust me, from working with a lot of them, it's a problem everywhere. Nobody wants to spend any money on taking enough care of their current customers, and that's part of the problem. So now that you're taking yourself out of the mix, working directly for a brand and now working in the consulting space, when you look back at the industry, not necessarily picking on John Hancock or Blue Cross or any company, where do you see the industry really missing with what they're doing wrong in the marketing space?
I think when I look at the overall insurance industry, what I see is there's this mad dash to digitization, right?
Mm-hmm.
And everyone is really focused on it. Everyone's trying to get there. I would argue some are doing better job than others. But if you don't stop and pause and reevaluate your business and reevaluate your workflows and the way your processes work, you're just going to end up taking bad process and digitizing bad process.
Amen.
And I think this is a big opportunity for insurers to really look at how they administer their processes and their workflows to simplify them. I think there's a real opportunity here for insurers to either reimagine or re-engineer their entire business here in a digital fashion. If we just take bad process and digitize it, we have a bad digital process. So we have to rethink this, and we have to simplify it and make it a lot easier for the end customer.
Well, whenever I see brands, that I was on the brand side when I first keynoted at that same conference, but when I saw you, I enjoyed talking to you. Wasn't trying to sell you anything, but I think about the guys and girls like you that go to these kind of conferences, and then you get assaulted by all the different vendors and different ways that somebody's an expert in trying to help you grow your business. It happens all the time. I'm sure you see that, and you get those kind of requests nonstop. Sure. We've got some way to generate a lot more leads. When you started thinking about really how to augment your volume of leads when you were in the CMO role, what did you typically think of? What was the mindset? Was it something you did from a channel perspective? You had budget, you had to move around. Where did you think, where could we grow a lead volume, and how are we going to get that?
Well, for us, really, this was about our direct-to-consumer business, right? And this was about generating leads for that direct-to-consumer business. And whether it was, in my role as a head of that direct business at Hancock, or in the consulting engagements I do today, really how we prioritize, quite frankly, is based on a number of factors, right? So I think acquisition cost for me is huge, right? I don't want to be overpaying for leads. I don't want to be overpaying for customers. I initially started my focus at the top of the funnel, right? What do my lead costs look like? But what became far more critical to me was, what do my customer acquisition costs look like? So the end cost of putting the customer through that funnel. I do a ton of work on optimizing that. I would rather grow slower and have my acquisition efficiency, be the focal point, because leads are expensive, particularly in insurance. You're paying a lot of money for a customer.
Non-branded search terms, it's crazy.
Exactly. And so, we really focused our efforts on, the end customer, placement of that customer, and maximizing the efficiency of that acquisition funnel. I think some other things we also start to look at, which in the world of big data make a lot of sense, is looking at who's our best customer, right? What type of customer is giving us the best risk? What type of customer is coming from what channel? So being able to map out a customer journey and track and follow customers as they go through the entire journey, so that at the end I can do my analysis, and from a risk perspective I can say, this campaign or this channel yielded me the best mix. So it was very much about that type of thinking. We didn't really sit there and try to do a ton of, social works, and paid search doesn't. Sure, in our early days we did a lot of that. We tried to figure out the channels, but what happens? these channels are dynamic, right? And what I found was in one year, in one quarter, we would have 50% of our budget against paid search. And then as we went through that quarter, paid search became inefficient. So we would be optimizing and switching monies to other channels. And so to go at it at a channel perspective, I think is really tough. I think to optimize against cost and other important factors like risk and insurance make a lot of sense. And then your channel mix follows what your end objective is. We would optimize deep, deep, deep into the sales funnel, and that was, I think, what one of the things that we did well. We did well with is optimizing deep into the funnel, and that was through evolution, right? We learned to do that as we took this business, and at Hancock we were growing that business at 300% a year. So it was an important element of making sure that we weren't overpaying.
We talked about this before last time we were on the phone a few weeks ago. There was another conference that I'll say had a lot of fluffy social media marketing stuff, and they also had some great content there.
Right.
But how much of the role of the CMO today and the growth strategy mindset that you have really focuses on, and I don't want to oversimplify it or demonize it because there's sincerely a great value to it, but how much of it is built off of thinking about the fluffy stuff versus the acquisition stuff that is where you're typically measured? I don't know very many CMOs or CGOs who come to the point where they're saying they're just not seeing enough engagement. And that's on their social channels, and that's what you're judged on more highly than customer count.
Right.
And I think in this world that we're in right now, coming out of the coronavirus pandemic and where everybody's just in a heavy survival mode, I tend to worry a little bit that we're going to discount too much of the fluffy stuff, and there is a place for it. But I'm a little bit concerned that we're going to be too much acquisition focused, which is hard for somebody like me to ever say. I've never had a lack of acquisition focus, but you don't always do it with a harpoon. You can sometimes do it with a small hook, and that's a horrible analogy. But I wonder how much of this is going to be a hard sales approach in order to survive. How often do you really think about the softer side of your social media and marketing and weighing that into the entire picture during a time like this?
Well, listen, I think, yes, we're going through a lot right now. Yes, business is going to have some challenges coming out of this pandemic. But at the end of the day, I think what we've proven is that in order to do acquisition correctly, we have to be tapped into our customer, right? We have to understand their need. We have to understand their wants. We have to do the research. We have to do the due diligence. We have to do the testing. We have to do all of that, right? And that is what is going to optimize our acquisition spends, right? If we are able to tell stories to the customers that resonate with them, whether you put them in the acquisition bucket or the brand bucket, as long as the stories are sincere and they resonate with that customer, you're going to get traction. Yes, I'm an acquisition-focused marketer. I go by numbers. I think those things are hugely important. I think most people in our business, really aren't all about the numbers. I think things like the softer stuff still play an important and vital role and take up focus, right? I would say that the role of a marketer today or a CMO is really to help drive and bring the business strategy to fruition, right? I believe that the marketing function has evolved so much so that we're well beyond, the what color should everything be, to what are our strategic priorities and how do we engage with customers in the ways that they want to, and bringing that to fruition through, deep research, bringing that to fruition with building customer journey and experience mattering. I remember 5 years ago, I would talk about customer experience and not a lot of people would have interest in what I was saying. It is now the buzzword, right, in our business. And the reality is I think if we focus on the fundamentals of what experience do customers want and giving them that, we're going to be fine. And they will bring into fruition, yes, some of the softer skills. I think at the end of the day, if you can't measure something, it's not going to work. And today, most CMOs, most companies are spending time and effort trying to measure things. I do see that many actually spend time measuring the wrong things, like clicks and views and likes mean nothing to me. Um, I want to see people, click through rates. I want to see conversion rates. I want to see, placement rates. Those are the things that get me excited, as opposed to likes and lifetime value. And I think that is created by all those basic core modern marketing skill sets, right? Customer experience, digital. These things are now the language of a modern marketer. It's not all about brand and brand development.
One of the things I heard you say earlier that triggered a thought, especially when you talk about customer experience now being a buzzword. Another one, but I've been excited about, was Don Cody preaching this one 20 years ago, thinking about problem solving. How much of it with customers you work with today, or when you were even in the CMO role directly at John Hancock, do you really focus on fixing a problem for a customer, opposed to what I think most people are still doing, leading with our product or service, and that is for a lot of companies, sort of the customer, if you will, as opposed to the customer itself trying to fix a problem. It seems like we're often trying to put a square peg through a round hole, trying to fix our problem versus theirs.
Yeah, I think, in my time at Hancock, I have a client now that I'm doing similar work for. I'll be honest with you, I have seen this very strong desire to start with the customer. So not square peg round hole it, right? Not if you build it, they will come. And I've seen this really strong desire to tap into the voice of the customer and understand what the needs of that customer are. Now, I think our industry has been around for a long time. Certainly, there are people who think they know better. So sometimes the challenge becomes not actually doing the customer research and the insight, but it's actually listening to what that research says. And so, it's not as easy to say or to hear from a customer that they don't see a lot of value in something that, has existed for 100 years. And so I think the big challenge for carriers and insurers today is more around, I think they've built up their machines where they're listening and they're talking to customers. I think the next challenge is about, actioning those insights into things that still resonate with, the actuaries and the product folks, and taking that. There's almost like this role that marketing has to play, right, in this industry, which is be a translator for the customer to the rest of the organization.
Agreed. So you're working with insurance companies, and most insurance companies are pretty large institutions.
Right.
How can a company like yours help pivot a company that's typically a large institution? There are not a lot of startup insurance companies out there, I would imagine. The ones you're working with, like John Hancock, for example, is a massively huge company.
Right.
How do you help companies that large move that needle in the right direction as a consultant now?
Yeah. I think it actually starts with sponsorship and who is hiring you. We typically get hired by some fairly senior people to come in, and that makes a big difference, right? So this work is not just go and execute, right? It starts with a lot of discovery. It starts with asking a lot of questions, like the role of a CMO, where you have to go talk to your customer. You have to go talk to the various people in the organization to understand, where things are today, and we do that, and we do that well because we've been in those seats. I was a former corporate executive. My partners were all former corporate executives. None of us were lifelong consultants. So I think what we were able to bring to the table is a practicality to this. Our goal isn't here to come in, do an assessment, and hand you a PowerPoint deck at the end of this, right? Our goal is literally to roll up our sleeves, sit in on your staff meetings, and actually help you build your strategy, but then execute that strategy. So let me give you an example. So a client I'm working with right now, we are working on reimagining what their marketing function could look like, right? And that's a sweet area for me because I took the marketing organization at Hancock and moved it from one that was much more building collateral to actually listening to customers and marketing out and looking for results and driving business goals. And so this one's a fun assignment for me, and I like doing it because I'm able to sort of bring my own experience in from when I was in that role, right? And when I look at this opportunity, um, you know, not only are we doing the org design, but I was writing the job descriptions. I was actually interviewing some of the candidates that we're planning to bring in. So I think, we have a unique spot in the industry where we don't want to be, here's the fancy PowerPoint. We really want to help companies move their agenda forward and move their strategy forward. So, we roll up our sleeves and get right in there. Actually, right before you and I started talking today, I had an interview where I was doing initial screenings for one of my clients for an open role they have.
That's interesting. Well, Rahim, you're in the Boston area, and there are a few sharks off the coast. I ask this of everybody who's been on a shark's perspective, this question. What is your favorite kind of shark and why?
Oh, I love the great white shark.
Good man.
It is by far my favorite shark. Shark Week at my house is kind of a institution.
It's a sacred week.
It is. It is. My kids and I watch it. We love it. We love watching all the footage. Now we're avid travelers too, right? So on our list is to go down to South Africa and actually go out on that boat. And I'm petrified of getting in that water with that shark, but I'm mesmerized by it as well. So there's kind of this.
Well, you don't have to go to South Africa. You can go to Costa Rica. You can go to San Francisco. Go to Baja.
I can go to the Cape apparently, right? Because Cape Cod. Yeah, Cape Cod has a ton of
some cold water.
Great whites. Yeah.
But too dirty in South Africa. That's why you got to be in a cage. It's cold and murky, so they don't think you're a seal.
Yeah.
Rahim, it's that special time of the show. Are you ready for the 5 most interesting and important questions that you're going to be asked today?
All right. Okay.
All right. Number 1.
Shoot.
And you're originally from Canada, so I got to ask this question: Canadian healthcare or healthcare system in the U.S.?
Ooh, that's an easy one. Canadian healthcare.
All right. I'm not even going to make a comment about that. Number 2, universal life or term life?
Ooh, I think it depends on what the customer need is.
Yeah, but that's not a fair, good point. You have to pick one of them.
I'm listening to my customers, Kenneth. I'm listening to my customers.
Okay, fair enough.
Listen, I think there's both. There's room for both in the market.
Good. Number 3, the Toronto Blue Jays or the Boston Red Sox?
Toronto Blue Jays, all the way.
All right, number 4, as an acquisition marketer, consulting with companies now, paid search or content marketing?
Paid search.
Thank you. And the most important question that you're going to be asked today is biscuits or cornbread?
Cornbread.
That was easy. Good. So, Rahim, where can people find out more about you, follow your thoughts in the industry, see you speak at another conference, and more?
Yeah, so I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. So certainly follow me on LinkedIn. I post articles there. Anytime I'm speaking, I'm putting that out there. And now that I'm doing a lot more consulting, I have a little bit more time to write some of this and get that stuff out. So that's probably the best way to get a hold of me.
Agreed. Well, Rahim, thank you again so much for being with us today on A Shark's Perspective.
Awesome, Kenneth. Thank you so much. That was great.
So there was my conversation with Rahim Rajpar, a principal at Hawthorne Advisors, a consulting firm, and he's also the former CMO and Head of Direct to Consumer at John Hancock Insurance. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from a conversation with him. First, when he steps back and looks at the industry as a whole, he sees that there's a mad dash to digitization. And that's true in a lot of industries, but especially now, he warns, and I quote, that if you don't stop and pause and reevaluate your business and reevaluate your workflows and the way your processes work, you're just going to end up taking bad process and digitizing bad process. That's so very, very true. This is a great opportunity for all of us to look at what we're doing in business and marketing and simplify, reimagine, and re-engineer. Second, what confuses a lot of people still today in lead acquisition is looking solely at their lead cost. You've got to put a heavier focus on customer acquisition costs as opposed to the cost of leads. And there are so many other parts of that math puzzle, like the LTV of those customers, the cost you put on your sales teams, the time it takes someone to convert for a purchase, like an insurance policy rather than just a cheaper product you get in store. There's a lot of different pieces. And also, so much of this comes down to how well you do or do not understand actual attribution as opposed to just modeled or something like last click that confuses so many people even more when planning their spend. do as he recommends, optimize deep into the sales funnel. Third, with everything going on with the pandemic, I often think about the way we've done some, I'll call it fluffy stuff in marketing, and I wonder out of concern how much of that will be thrown out. And that's hard for somebody like me who's focused on growth to really say. But how much will be too heavy a push because of survival mode of so many companies? As he said, in order to do acquisition today and to do it well, we have to be tapped into our customer. And that's so very true. It's about helping them solve their problems. So keep that focus. We've just got to continue to better successfully measure the right things to help drive better understanding. Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. Start with your customer and their needs. And join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.